In one of my previous videos, I mentioned the 10 types of the Japanese teachers of English or the official teachers of English that you encounter while working as an assistant language teacher or ALT in Japan. For this video, I'm going to talk about the reverse side of the card. So this time, I'm gonna be presenting 8 complaints of Japanese teachers of English about the assistant language teachers or ALTs. So the things that I'll be mentioning in this video are based on what real Japanese teachers have said about their ALTs and also based on research or studies that I found online. And take note that the references that I have for this video are legit ones and not from just any other websites or gossip articles. These are real published documents. So let's start with case number 1. The ALTs are changed too often. So in some cases, private dispatch companies try to swap their ALTs every so often. So it depends on the contracting organization, or it depends on the Board of Education, how often or how long they want their hired ALTs stay in a particular school. But so far in the Board of Education or the contracting organization that I have, we don't get to be transferred from one school to another unless we request to be transferred. And again, if we do, it's still up for the Board of Education whether they approve it or not. And usually during the start of the semester or start of the school year, there's some movement in the school placements depending on how many new ALTs are coming over to the city. So again, for this complaint of the JTEs or of the Japanese teachers, the ALT doesn't actually have the direct control as to when they're gonna be transferred or how long will they be staying in a certain school or in a particular school. So I guess ALTs for this complaint, not guilty. Case number 2. The ALT speaks too fast and uses too much slang. I've actually heard of this complaint from a Japanese teacher of English that I work with. So since I'm not the first ALT in that particular school, the English teacher there actually shared that in their previous experiences, they encountered ALTs that speak too much and sometimes they couldn't really understand what they were saying. And so when I went to that school, the English teacher was really thankful that I don't speak too fast and that she could understand me better. So maybe that's one of the plus points for ALTs from the Philippines, since English is not our native language and our accent isn't really like American or British or Australian. So I think that's one good point for me, since according to my JTE or English teacher partner, I speak more clearly and they could understand me better. As ALTs, it is also, I think, our responsibility to be aware of ourselves that though we're talking with English teachers, Japanese English teachers, they are not as fluent as we are, and English is their foreign language. So maybe we can also decide when to speed up or when to slow down and when to use too much slang, or how much slang do we use for our discussions or communication with them, though it's maybe casual talk with our partner teachers. More importantly, when we're talking with our students or when we're talking inside the classroom, because of course they'd want to hear how a native speaker of English talks and uses the language, but let's remember that these students are learners of English as a foreign language, and most of them only get to use English language inside the classroom and during English time. So they don't have much exposure to using or hearing or reading English in their daily lives. So again, be aware of the level of English that you use in your classrooms. Case number 3. The ALT doesn't make time for meetings and goes home early. In this case, I'm half guilty because usually I go home at 4:30 and my official time ends at 4:45. But I always make sure that I find time for a meeting for planning the next lesson with the JTEs that I have.
Wow!
So since I have the teacher's schedule and the class schedules of my schools, I get to set a specific time or period for consultation with my OTE or with my JTE. So during that time, I tell them at the start of the semester that, okay, this period is our consultation time. So we plan the lesson, we exchange ideas about what we're going to do the next class or the next period. And for 4 years now, it works so fine with us. As I mentioned also in my previous videos, I don't join the students in their after-school activities. So after school activities, the students go to their clubs, and the teachers, the coaches also join their students. So after that, that's the only time that they have free time to talk about plans for the next lesson. And remember, most Japanese teachers work overtime without being compensated. So as an ALT, I don't advise you, I don't recommend you to set the appointment or the consultation time with your OTE or with your JTE after school. You can try to get their schedule, their class schedules, and find their vacant time or vacant periods. So you'll have at least 50 minutes of that period to talk about your lesson, to plan your lesson. Case number 4, the ALT always makes jokes and doesn't take the lesson seriously. Like, seriously? So maybe this is a common observation of the JTEs or the Japanese teachers with their ALTs. But yeah, sometimes humor inside the classroom is really important. But again, as ALTs, we should be aware of the level of understanding that our JTEs or our students have. So maybe if we make jokes too often, they might see it as what I mentioned earlier, not taking things seriously. But sometimes making jokes or being a kenkoi or a natural born comedian also gives plus points for you, for an ALT, to build better relationships with their co-teachers or with their JTEs. So again, it's just a matter of common sense. Everything has a perfect timing. You can crack jokes when you think it's really necessary, and you may take things seriously when it's important to talk about things seriously. So maybe what's funny for you is not funny for your JTE or funny for the students. So as an ALT, you should know your JTEs better. You get to work with them almost every week. So you should know the kinds of jokes that you share or the timing of your jokes. If you think or if you observe that your OTE or your JTE is also a cool guy or a cool teacher who makes fun of themselves in front of the class or during classes, then you can also bring out the joker or the natural born comedian in you. What I noticed with the Japanese teachers is that when you're making jokes inside the classroom, make sure that somehow you give them the signal that you're giving them a joke, or beforehand you're giving the students a joke. So, because sometimes when Japanese people are caught off guard, it might be awkward, or they might get offended with the kind of joke that you give. Or maybe they can't ride onto your jokes. So yeah, that's the worst part of it. Like, you're the only person who's enjoying your joke in the classroom. So yeah, again, perfect timing and common sense. Case number 5, the ALT complains too much. Well, I know some people who have a lot of complaints about petty things, about small things. Like, they have something to say, they have something to complain about certain things, always. Maybe these are the ALTs who don't actually have the heart or the passion for teaching, that they just applied for ALT because of some other factors other than love for teaching. Like, they just applied for the position because they're going to Japan and they're going to experience Japan. They can live and work in Japan, and then after some time, after a certain period, they're gonna be quitting their program or quitting their role as ALT and look for another job that they actually enjoy or that they actually love. So again, we can't just blame them for not loving or not having the passion to teach or having the passion about being an ALT, but we can we can blame them for why apply for it when you don't actually enjoy it, or why are you still staying in that position when you're not enjoying anymore. Yeah, sometimes complaining makes good results, but anything that's too much is not good anymore. It's not healthy anymore. So maybe you can complain, but again, perfect time, right place, and with the right reasons or purposes. Case number 6. The ALT doesn't have enough or sufficient educational experience or content background to become a teacher. So as I mentioned in my previous videos, not all ALTs are graduates of an education degree. And this was actually revealed or put into official document by a study or a research conducted in 2007, that some participants, especially of the JET program, accept or receive their acceptance letters weeks after their graduation or weeks before their graduation. So this means that the ALTs don't have enough time to prepare for the role that they'll be doing when they come here to Japan as ALTs. So that's one of the common complaints of Japanese teachers about their ALTs. So yeah, we can't actually blame them for saying this, since, for example, the JET program accepts graduates of any bachelor's degree and who are set to graduate before their departure date to Japan. So though the organizations sponsoring the program conduct or give trainings or orientations before actually deploying these ALTs or these new ALTs to their placements, but just a few days of training, I think, isn't sufficient or isn't enough to actually give them the proper training that they need when they go to their respective school placements. So for this case, I give the points to the JTEs, or the Japanese teachers of English. Case number 7, this is actually surprising for me because I can sense like a sort of competition in this case. So again, case number 7, the presence of native speakers' ideals depowers Japanese English within the teacher's perspective. So this is actually from a study in 2012. So according to another study in 2013, the only real English is used by native speakers. And non-native speakers are presented as, eternal language learners. So they have made their ultimate goal in teaching English language for students to become like a native speaker. So for this case, I don't agree with the Japanese teachers. As in 100%, I don't agree with them. But we can't blame them also. Maybe because that's how they were taught, or how they were raised, or how they were trained while they were learning the English language. Because I've personally encountered some people who regard non-native speakers or someone like me who has English as a second language as not equal to a native speaker. That's why when you look at like job postings for English teachers in Japan, there are some specific nationalities that they mention in there, or that they include in there as to the nationalities of the applicants they should consider for the position. Yeah, those people or those nationalities who come from the outer circle of English language learning, like the US, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and Ireland, and some other few countries. So they specify those countries for consideration in the application. In case number 8, the last case, some Japanese teachers think that experienced teachers in their respective countries who become ALTs are too set for their own teaching strategies that they can't adapt effectively to Japan schools. Which is partly true, because as a licensed professional teacher myself, there are some strategies or techniques that my Japanese teachers of English partners that I don't agree with, and sometimes after a class I get to discuss with them. I get to give my comments about a certain activity in their class, or in their presentation, something like that, or how they discussed or how they presented a certain lesson. So yeah, maybe I get the point of the Japanese teachers who say that sometimes it also takes an open mind and a willing heart to be taught or to learn something. As one of my previous head teachers before said, in order for you to learn important things, you should also learn to unlearn some things. As a licensed professional teacher for quite some time back in the Philippines, maybe I also need to adjust and to adapt to the Japanese school system, because most of the strategies that we use back in the Philippines may not be applicable to the Japanese learners, or may not be agreeable to the Japanese teachers. So it's just a matter of siguro meeting halfway na lang. So you can suggest, you can give your opinions or your comments to your Japanese teacher of English, and try also to look at how effective or how applicable those strategies or techniques or teaching strategies and teaching techniques to the Japanese learners. So again, it's just a matter of knowing or identifying the perfect time, the right time, and the perfect place or perfect opportunity for you to employ your own teaching strategies and techniques. So those are some of the common complaints of Japanese teachers of English about their ALTs. So if you're one of those ALTs, maybe somehow you'll now have an idea on how your Japanese teachers of English partners see you as their partner teacher. And at the same time, it's also a chance for you to examine yourself or to think about changing or improving the way you interact with them or you work with them. So that's all for this video. I'll see you again next time.